Minas Morgul was once a fortress of Gondor, initially called Minas Ithil, meaning the Tower of the Moon. It was a twin city of Minas Tirith, but it was located on the other side of the river Anduin, deep within a long, tilted valley, later known as the Morgul Vale, that ran back far into the mountains. Some way within the valley's arms, high on a rocky seat, upon the black knees of the Ephel Duat, the mountains of shadow, stood the walls and tower of the city. The city could be accessed from the west by a road that led from the crossroads in Ithilien, eventually spanning a wide bridge that passed over the stream in the midst of the valley, and went on, winding up past the city, up the pass to Mordor. Minas Morgul overlooked the region of Ithilien and controlled the only passes through the mountains that led into Mordor, the Morgul Pass and the Pass of Ungol. Minas Ithil was built by the faithful Númenorans, who escaped Númenor's destruction in the Second Age. After the destruction of their island, Isildur and Anarion, the sons of Elendil, landed in Gondor. Isildur built Minas Ithil, near the mountainous border of Mordor, from where he would rule the fief of Ithilien, while Anarion built Minas Anor to rule over the fief of Anorien. The Tower of the Moon was intended right from the beginning as the dwelling of the family of Isildur and a defense against Mordor. Therefore, Minas Ithil housed the Palantir, the Ithil stone, and the first white tree of Gondor. As the easternmost fortification of the kingdom of Gondor, Minas Ithil safeguarded the eastern borders of the realm and protected the capital Osgiliath from the forces of Mordor during the later part of Second Age and the early part of the Third Age. In its heyday, Minas Ithil was a beautiful place indeed. It was a walled city of white marble, built on a high shelf of rock. Within the walls there were wide houses and a tall tower, which had many windows, while the top of the tower revolved slowly back and forth. The moon cast silver light throughout the country yards and streets. The moonlight filled its inner courts and reflected off the marble walls, causing its walls to gleam silver and white, with the houses shining white as well. At the tops of the towers flew banners bearing the symbol of Minas Ithil, which was the moon. The city was accessed by a road, which was said to gleam like the city's white marble walls, running over a bridge as it crossed Imlat Morgul. Large meadows were placed on both banks of the stream. But Sauron also escaped the destruction of Númenor, although he lost his fair form in the event. Using the power stored in his ring, he was able to return to Mordor, which remained more or less intact. After creating a new body for himself, not fair this time, but terrible and formidable, he decided to attack the exiles of Númenor quickly, before they could gather strength. In the year 3429 of the Second Age, the Dark Lord sent a great army against Minas Ithil in a surprise attack. The city was taken by storm, and the white tree was burned. Luckily, Isildur was able to flee the fortress town with a seeding which he planted in Minas Anor, the future Minas Tirith, in the year 2 of the Third Age. However, only a year after its capture by Sauron forces, Anarion recaptured the city, which was then held by the sons of Isildur for the duration of the War of the Last Alliance. After Sauron was defeated, 11 years after the liberation of the Tower of the Moon, a watch was kept at Minas Ithil to prevent the return of evil to Mordor. Unfortunately, most of the city's population perished in the Great Plague, leaving it deserted save for a garrison together with supporting craftsmen and their families. After the elves under Glorfindel and Elrond, helped by Gondorian army under Prince Eanor, defeated the evil kingdom of Angmar in the north, the Witch King of Angmar fled back to Mordor to prepare it for the return of his master. As the power of Gondor weakened, Cirith Ungol and other fortresses inside Mordor were abandoned. Then the watch upon the walls of Mordor slept. and the dark things crept back to Gorgoroth. This enabled the Witch King to summon back his fellow Nazgul. The most fearsome of Sauron's minions returned to Mordor at the end of the second millennium of the Third Age to help their leader in his mustering of forces. It took the Witch King only 20 years to prepare the armies of darkness for an assault. The nine Nazgul, led by their Witch King, brought a great force down the Ungol Pass and attacked Minas Ithil. During the initial battle in front of the town, the defenders were able to hold on long enough to enable all the remaining civilians to retreat down the valley to the crossroads, and thus escape to Ithilien and Osgiliath. Only then did the defenders retire behind the walls. The Witch King then laid siege to Minas Ithil, ordering his orcs to scale the walls on multiple occasions, but without success. Because no relieving army was able to break the siege, the garrison slowly ran out of supplies and strength. After 2 years of siege, the city fell and was transformed into a bastion of evil. The beauty was replaced by terror. The former white tower decayed into a dark fortress thanks to the permanent presence of ring wraiths. As a result, Minas Ithil came to be called Minas Morgul, the Tower of Dark Sorcery, and was used by the forces of Mordor as a base to attack Gondor. The orcs called Minas Morgul Dusgoi in their black speech. The lovely white light was replaced by a sickly corpse pale light. The meadows were filled with sick pale flowers, and Imlat Morgul began to steam cold, poisonous vapors. At the head of the bridge crossing the stream, the bestial and human figures that stood there were corrupted to become silent watchers, the guardians of the bridge. The Morgul Road now crossed the river Morgulduin over a wide bridge, and then went up the slope in serpentines to the gate of Minas Morgul in the outer circle of its walls on the north side of the city. The gate now had the shape of an open mouth that was filled with teeth and had an eye on both sides. As Minas Morgul was occupied by fell creatures, servants of the ringwraiths, it changed into a foul, evil place indeed. At that time, the moon symbol of the city was modified. Although the moon was still used, it was disfigured, additionally featuring a ghastly face of death alongside it. What was even worse, the palantir kept in the tower fell into the hands of Sauron, unknowingly to anybody in the West. This Ithil stone was later used by the Dark Lord to influence and corrupt Saruman as well as Denethor II of Gondor. Many Gondorians also fled from Ithilien after the fall of the tower to settle further west behind the great river Anduin. Only once did the Gondorian forces try to take the tower back, but without success. The forces of Sauron were too strong already, and when an initial assault failed, the siege proved impossible due to lack of men and constant harassment by reinforcements from Mordor. Therefore, the army of Gondor retired back to Osgiliath, leaving the fortress to Sauron for good. Seeing this humiliation, the Witch King from Minas Morgul challenged his old enemy, the King of Gondor, who previously played a key role in defeating the power of Angmar in Eriador, for a single combat in front of the city. But the steward of the king wisely held the king back, leaving the challenge unanswered. But 48 years after the fall of the Tower of the Moon, King Eärnur of Gondor was challenged by the Witch King for a single combat again, and this time, with no wise steward to advise him against it, Eärnur accepted. The last king of Gondor took only a small escort of knights up the Morgul Valley, trusting the word of Nazgul for a fair duel, only to be never seen again. He was ambushed, captured, and tortured for a long time inside the fortress of Isildur, till he died, leaving no heir to inherit the throne of the southern kingdom. Thus the Witch King ended the line of kings in Gondor. During the watchful peace that followed, the lords of Morgul secretly bred the Uruk-hai, At the end of this period of relative peace, terror and war were directed at Gondor from Minas Morgul. These new orcish creatures assailed and overran Ithilien. Osgiliath was finally ruined, and although it was later liberated, Ithilien became deserted by all the remaining population. At that time, the corruption of the Ringwraiths changed also the surrounding countryside of the former Minas Ithil. A long tilted valley, a deep gulf of shadow, ran back far into the mountains. Upon the further side, some way within the valley's arms, high on a rocky seat upon Ependuat, stood the walls and towers of Minas Morgul. All was dark about it, earth and sky, but it was lit with light. Not the light welling through the marble walls of Minas Ithil long ago, fair and radiant in the hollow of the hills. Paler, indeed, than the moon ailing in some slow eclipse was the light of it now, wavering and blowing like a noisome exhalation of decay, a corpse light, a light that illuminated nothing. In fashion, Minas Morgul was still much like Minas Tirith, only corrupted. Originally, the city's walls glowed with pale moonlight, but under the long control of the Ringwraiths, it became a city of horror, where the minds of living men would run to madness if they remained too long. The topmost course of the tower still revolved slowly, while the walls were illuminated by a pale, luminously sickly glow. The city had a strange watchfulness about it now, and intruders to Morgul Vale were always noted. Most of those who approached the city could not stand to set eyes on it, and felt watched. During the War of the Ring, the main army that attacked Minas Tirith set out from Minas Morgul, commanded by the Witch King of Angmar, and observed by Frodo Baggins with Samwise Gamgee and Gollum. After some weak opposition in Osgiliath, the Morgul host proceeded to the Pelennor fields and laid siege to Minas Tirith. However, the host, including the city's garrison, was devastated during the subsequent battle of the Pelennor fields, and only a small remnant, commanded by Gotmog, returned over the river Anduin back to their garrison town. Later, when moving their army to the Black Gate of Mordor, Aragorn and Gandalf broke the bridge outside the city gates and set the fields around the city on fire to keep any force from passing that way to the crossroads and into their backs. They met no opposition, as practically the entire city's garrison had been wiped out at the battle in front of Minas Tirith and the consequent rout. After the war, Aragorn, now as King Elessar, counseled Faramir, who was made Prince of Ithilien, to make his abode in Emin Arnen, southeast of Minas Tirith, in Ithilien, rather than in Minas Morgul, and also decreed that Minas Ithil in the Morgul Vale, despoiled by its years as Minas Morgul, be completely destroyed, for although it might in time come to be made clean, no man might dwell there for many long years. It is not known if the city was ever rebuilt again. If you like the video, please give it a thumb up and consider subscribing if you are not already, as each takes just a second to do and will be very much appreciated. And for those willing to go the extra mile, the Buy Me a Coffee link is in the description below. Thank you everybody. See you next time.